Hey everyone, so today I want to answer the question, should you be writing grants during the COVID-19 pandemic? So let's talk about it. Hey everybody, this is Tiffany with the Boss on the Budget. So I created Boss on the Budget for small and new nonprofits to help them get up and running. And so I wanted to talk today about how to navigate grant writing in the midst of what we're dealing with COVID-19. So a question that has come up a lot in my online support group for grant writers is, should we be writing grants right now? Is this appropriate for us to do this? So I wanted to offer some advice, especially targeted towards smaller nonprofits or those who have just gotten started. Before I dive into that, I just want to give my condolences to anyone who has lost a loved one or a family member to COVID-19, and I want to send my well wishes to anyone who has any health issues or who's recovering from the virus. Also, if you're interested, so if you're self-quarantined right now, or maybe we're past that period, I hope we eventually get out of it, but if you're interested in learning how to write grants, but you don't know where to start and you find yourself having writer's block, I have a grant writing workbook that will be useful for you. It guides you through 10 worksheets to help you figure out how to answer the right questions, and it guides you through the 10 common elements of every proposal. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the description box below. And if you download my free grants worksheet, you get a discount. Just telling you. So let's answer the question, should you be writing grants right now? And the short answer is absolutely yes. There is no reason why you should stop. So I want to give just some background of why that's so important. So the federal government and Congress, they've been working together to develop these bills, these stimulus bills for the citizens of the United States, right? So they want to stimulate the economy so that it doesn't come to a screeching halt. So what they're doing is pumping billions of dollars into businesses, and that includes small nonprofits, to help you keep your operations going. So they want to prevent you from firing staff or laying off staff, and they want to prevent you from decreasing your pay. So a lot of people are going down to 25% pay or 50% pay. What they want to do is avoid that, so they're pumping money into the economy to prevent that from happening. So the whole point is they don't want you to stop anything. They want to get back to normal. And in order to get back to normal, we have to keep our processes and our systems going. Because if you get to 6 months from now and you had stopped writing now, you will find that you're in a load of trouble. You will find a huge source of income missing because you didn't keep in that groove, in that flow of writing. The point is for us to get past this period, but also to recover. So you have to keep writing. You have to keep up to make sure that you can get through this rough patch as an organization. Now, a lot of this assistance that's been put out by the federal government is not applicable for newer nonprofits who weren't around January 1st of this year, or if you don't have your 501c3 tax exempt status, there are some assistance you just cannot get. So I do want to offer some advice, even if you can't get any assistance right now, for what to do moving forward. So if you're looking for grants and you're trying to figure out how to navigate grant writing during this time, I suggest that you have a strategy for the short term, for the immediate, and then for the long term. The short term and immediate strategy is around what do we need to do to stop the bleeding now, not just for our own nonprofit, but for the people that we serve or whoever your client is, whoever your target population is. So if they have some kind of immediate need and you have a connection to them, or you're on the front line and you can provide assistance to them in however way you can, then I suggest you reach out to your community foundation, you reach out to your nonprofit association. If you have a United Way in your area or any kind of consortium or association of nonprofits, reach out to them because they are probably in the center of it all and they know about local money that's been moving around to support local organizations. The other place I suggest you look is if you have like a small business association or an economic development division in your local government, they also may be creating micro grants or emergency relief funding for your organization. So I suggest you look locally, look to your networks. You can also look to your current funders. You can go to them and say, hey, this is what's happening on the front line. We need to stop the bleeding. We need to get food. We need to get necessities to our clients. How can you help? What ways can we work together to make sure our families and our children are okay? And I talk a lot about children and families because my background's in foster care and adoption, but it's anybody that you serve. Is there a way you can meet their needs? Funders are looking to help. So if you can communicate to them, hey, we have a way to get to them. We have a way to serve them that's unique and innovative, because everyone has to be unique right now, right? Everyone has to be innovative right now. Then I should suggest you communicate with your funders, let them know what's happening, and see if they're willing or able to partner with you. It's a partnership. It's not you just get money from someone and you run and take it and do what you want to do. They want to see some good happening too. So frame it as a partnership and frame it from the needs of the people. But also be realistic about what you need. If you are taking a big loss because you couldn't do a fundraising event or you couldn't do something that usually generates money, be honest and upfront about that. Be real about what it means to your operations. If we can't recover, we're not able to serve such and such people or this many people. Remember to frame it always in the need of the people you're serving, in the impact you can have, or the impact if you don't do it. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So some people are wondering, so okay, Tiffany, you got the short-term immediate need. What should we do just beyond? Because normally we would be grant writing anyway. So that's the longer term strategy. I would suggest that any flow that you have for writing, keep that up. Don't stop, even ramp it up at this point, because you're going to need a lot to get back on track. But I would suggest that you make sure that in any narrative that you write, that you don't ignore the context of what we're dealing with right now. So always use COVID-19 as a frame of reference when you're talking about how to move forward, because I think it just makes you seem realistic. It just makes you seem like you're not sugarcoating anything that's happening out there. So what do I mean? So for example, if you have an after-school program, there's a lot of schools that have shut down because of COVID-19. So I would not suggest you use the same old narrative that you use for every grant and recycle it and say, hey, we need money to serve these kids because blah, blah, blah. Well, everyone knows that you can't really serve kids in the school like normal because nobody's in school. Kids are stuck in their homes. So what are ways you can add or shift your programming and mention what you have to do to adapt moving forward when you're talking about your need and the type of programming that you have. And even if you're writing for programming for later in the school year when we hope schools open back up, I think it's important to say, well, in the context of what we've just dealt with, we realize now that we have to be nimble, or we realize now that we have to maintain connections with children's homes because that connection is key in case we can't get to them in the schools. I just think that it's important that you don't ignore what's happening. It shows that you're relevant, that you're realistic, and that you're really paying attention to the needs of your people. You're not just writing narrative just so you can get money from a grant. So if you're a new and small nonprofit and you don't really have a grant writing schedule, or you haven't gotten into a rhythm of that yet, and you're just not eligible for much of the assistance that's out there right now, what do you do? Well, we have to talk about the reality. So I think right now, because everyone's in the mode of taking care of each other and there's just a great sense of community, there's a lot of funding and resources out there. But the reality is, if the economy does crash, there will be consequences moving forward for some of your funders. So some of your funders invest in the stock market. They have huge endowments where they pull down money to provide grants. Well, those endowments may take a huge hit because of the stock market. We don't know, but they may take a huge hit. And so they may get tighter with their purses if they're trying to recover from those losses. Also, if you engage a lot of corporations for sponsorships or even for grants, they may also be affected, but it depends on the industry, right? Obviously, if it's the airline industry or the hospitality industry, they're taking a huge hit. So don't expect much from them moving out of this period. But there are other industries that have thrived, like software industries or virtual meeting companies like Zoom. They're going to thrive in this environment. People who make masks or make disinfectant sprays, they're going to thrive. So it just means you need to be adaptive. It just means you got to be nimble and understand who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with the federal government, just know that it's probably business as normal. Any requests for proposals that they were going to put out this year are probably going to be the same. Next year, there may be a lot more attention paid to certain types of things like the workforce instead of social services. They may want to pull back because they've given so much money this year. And then also, it's an election year. So we just got to pay attention to what's happening around us and how what's happening in society and the economy does impact our funders, and it impacts us. So we need to pay attention. So if you're a new or small nonprofit, here's some things that I would suggest to make you stronger moving forward. No one can predict a recession. No one can predict a global pandemic, right? We just never know when this kind of stuff happens, but there are some things you can do to prepare yourself, to prepare your board and your organization. So these principles are not going to change whether it's today during a global pandemic, whether it's 6 months from now when we may be in a recession, whether it's 6 years from now or 6 years ago. It doesn't matter. These principles stay the same. First of all, make sure you have multiple sources of revenue. As a newer nonprofit, it may seem insurmountable. You're like, well, we don't even have any income, Tiffany. So you mean to tell me I got to figure out how to get it from multiple places? I'm just saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Tried and true principle, right? So don't rely on only grants. Don't rely only on individual donations. Don't rely only on corporate sponsorships. Because when we see that one it's like a balancing game, right? So one lever goes down because people can't afford to give anymore or corporations are losing money, then the other lever we have to rely more on that lever. So we have to rely more on grants. We just have to make sure we are balanced in our approach. And hey, there's some things that can't be avoided, but you will be in a much better place if you have multiple places where you're getting money so that if something happens, that you're not completely lost when you don't have a certain source of income anymore. The second thing I would say is make sure you invest in having real relationships with the people who support you. So that means you're not only interested in what they can give to you. You're not only interested in any volunteer work you can get out of them. You're not just interested in what money you can get out of them. You actually care about what they're interested in, and you try to meet their needs. You try to give them what they need, whether that be information or whether it be comfort. For example, there are a lot of nonprofits right now who are just reaching out to their donors just to say, hey, we just want to make sure you're okay. We know this is a troubling time, and we're just reaching out, making sure everyone is good. That means you care. It's not for the intention of getting money, but it means that we see you as a part of our community. We see you as a part of our nonprofit. The same thing goes with your funders. Communicate with them. Let them know what's happening. Just say, hey, we just reached out to our families and we're hearing that they're struggling with this. Or we reached out and our community is rallying around each other and they're doing great things. And I just wanted to share with you lessons learned so maybe you can share with other people. And you know why that's important? Because the information sharing makes funders more confident that you know what you're doing, that you have a foothold in your community, that you are the cornerstone or a strong organization in your community, and they just begin to build trust in you, and they're more confident in giving you money and giving you resources and even recommending you for other people or for other grants. So it's really important to have strong relationships, not just in the pandemic, but just period. Keep communications open with your funders and check in with them. Check in with your donors because we're people, we're humans, so we thrive off connection. The last thing I'll say is it's important, especially if you are smaller, to have really good connections with movers and shakers in your community. So who are those people? They are your lawmakers. They can be your county council. They can be your advocacy organizations, so the people who fight for legislation in your local community. They could be church leaders. There are people who are sounding the alarm or always talking about an issue or lifting up an issue, or they are key decision makers in your community, because that feedback loop, that communication is important. So what I've seen on the national level, there are a bunch of advocacy organizations that are knocking down congressmen and women's doors saying, hey, our communities are struggling in this way. Hey, if we don't do something about this, this is going to happen. And Congress has been especially responsive. The reason why the nonprofits are included in a lot of the assistance for small businesses is because there were organizations working to make sure nonprofits were included. In my field, there's a lot of concern about foster parents and child protective services. There are people working day and night to make sure their issues are heard so that when legislation is created, they are not ignored. Their needs, the needs of their clients and the people they serve are met. That is so important that you keep that communication, your feedback loop with people who are the decision makers in your community. It makes you a staple in your community, and it makes sure you get what you need as an organization. And it just elevates you as a nonprofit. And a lot of times when you're just starting and nobody knows you, it's really hard to get a footing and to get people to support you. But when you begin to be one of those people who are ringing the alarm, one of those people who are always talking about the issue or seems to have an interesting perspective on the issue, people begin to notice you. So it's really important that you pay attention to how you communicate your needs, how you advocate, how you lift up an issue, because it then will begin to elevate you as a nonprofit and you'll reap the rewards eventually. So I hope that information was really helpful. If you have any questions for me, you can always visit me at my website at www.bossonabudget.com, and I will see you in the next video.